So obviously, yeah, Johnny Somali might have done one of the biggest mistakes in his entire case. For some reason, he decided to appeal. Remember in my last stream, I was saying, oh, the prosecutor might appeal because, the prosecutor's trying to extend a sentence. So that's why they would want to appeal. Why would he appeal? I don't know.
Alright, so I'm sure at this point you all know about Johnny Somali and how he was recently sentenced on April 15th. In that trial, after finding him guilty on all 8 of his charges, the judge in the South Korean court gave him the following punishments: 6 months of jail time doing hard labor inside, 5 years registered on a Korean sex offender registry, which means he can't work in places where kids and disabled people are for those 5 years, an additional 20 days of detention, and at this point probably a travel ban to South Korea. Now, don't get me wrong. While it was nice seeing Johnny get his just desserts for being an antagonistic piece of shit in foreign countries for a drop of attention, one point of contention about the punishment that many people had was in regards to the 6 months of jail time. Originally, the prosecution proposed that Johnny get 3 years of prison with labor as part of his sentencing. But unfortunately, that obviously never happened. The main reasoning for this was because the judge ruled that even though it was clear that Johnny was harassing people for content, there was no lasting harm due to the people affected not feeling any lasting harm/shame themselves, so he got a reduced sentence. While I understand that in court, people are not always going to get the max sentence based on their charges. I mean, if that was the case, Johnny would be in jail for multiple decades after being found guilty on all 8 charges. I was surprised at the drastic drop in jail time from 3 years down to 6 months, as that means Johnny's only spending a sixth of the proposed time that he should have been spending in jail. A more reasonable compromise would have been him jailed up for a year or 2. So that's it. Johnny gets his 6 months of jail time and gets to go free after. Or it's a coin flip on whether or not he actually learned his lesson or not, or will continue to harass people in foreign countries for online attention. Well, no. Luckily though, there is a week's period where people can appeal the sentencing, and if it's approved, there is another trial held to see what the new sentencing should be, and people decide to capitalize on this. On April 17th, Bonbon's lawyer filed one of these said appeals, where the main argument is just because Bonbon was calm and composed when she gave her testimony about the deepfakes, that doesn't mean she didn't feel sufficient shame when Johnny made/shared the deepfake of her. They also argued that it would set a bad precedent if victims had to have emotional breakdowns on a stand in order to represent sufficient shame/humiliation, which I think is fair. You should be able to express your grievances in a calm and composed manner without having a visible mental breakdown about it, which turns the court into a giant spectacle. While Bonbon's lawyer did send that appeal to the prosecution team, and the prosecution team decided to file out an appeal on the 21st of April, meaning that Johnny will have to wait for the appeal to be processed before the appeal trial itself. And more importantly, they are re-evaluating his punishment to see if it really fits the crime, and considering how heavily they cut down on his jail time, I have a feeling they're going to fix that. It gets better and better, although not for the reason you think. Even luckier, the day before, on April 20th, Johnny has also filed an appeal. Now, I know some of you guys are asking, why is this a good thing? Hear me out. So after sentencing, there is a week's period after that to appeal, which anyone can do, which is what both Johnny and the prosecution did. However, he already got an excellent deal with his 6 months of jail time as opposed to the 3 years. I honestly don't know why he's even trying to fight the court on things that are already definitely proven true due to him live streaming his own crimes. The appeal trial doesn't even unguilty him on any of his 8 charges. This is the type of greed they be talking about in the Bible. Bro got off relatively light and immediately jumps back into the legal lion's den. Because reminder, Johnny filed out his appeal first. The prosecution at the time of Johnny filing his appeal have not officially filed their appeal yet. And he had no idea that the prosecution was also going to file an appeal at the time. The time it takes for an appeal to be processed through the South Korean court system is roughly the same amount of time his original jail sentence would have been. So he just extended his stay in South Korea for no good reason. Zero-sum game. High risk, no reward. Reminder, these appeals filed to the court by Johnny and the prosecution doesn't change the fact that Johnny was found guilty on all 8 charges. It only affects what Johnny's sentencing should be from his April 15th trial. One thing to note though, the appeals filed from both the prosecution and Johnny will not result in 2 separate appeal trials. Rather, they will be combined into one singular appeal trial. Don't think this makes Johnny's appeal any easier though. For starters, processing one of these appeals takes a very long time. I've seen general estimates of it taking 4 to 6 months for an appeal to be processed through the court before the appeal trial can actually start.
From what I know, the average time for a new trial to start is about 5 months.
However, since Johnny hasn't started his 6 months of jail time yet, he is going to be placed into a detention center until both the appeal is approved and the appeal trial is over, which could take around a year, maybe even 2 years in some cases. Although that usually only happens if the appeal is taken all the way up to South Korea's Supreme Court. I would also like to note that the detention center that Johnny will be placed in is very low quality and much worse than regular prison. The current unconfirmed rumor is that Johnny is going to be placed in a Sonambu detention center, although it doesn't matter as the quality of life in all the detention centers is pretty much the same, in the sense that it is more restrictive and harsh. The living conditions in South Korea's detention centers are a lot worse than the living conditions in their prisons, i.e. worse quality food, dirtier, extremely crowded conditions, sleeping next to a toilet hole, etc. You know, basically spending time in an unsanitary, packed detention center just in time for the sweltering summer heat. I wonder how bad the stench is gonna be. Johnny's about to face hell on earth. Keep in mind, he has to stay in that detention center till both the appeal is processed, which takes around 4 to 6 months, and the appeal trial is completed, which according to online estimates will take an average of another 6 months, or if the appeal is brought all the way up to the Supreme Court, another year to a year and a half. For a combined total of a year to 2 for both the appeal processing and the appeal trial itself. Just to hammer in how bad the quality of life is in those detention centers, someone who was originally in a detention center but now in a regular labor prison, where Johnny would have been, that the labor prison is so much better than a detention center.
This letter explains how much better the labor prison is than the detention center. They say, try to come fast because in Chonan, that's the labor prison, the time is passing very well. Every morning we go to the factory and 5 o'clock we come to the room. All day we're busy in work, talking to many people and also having the opportunity of a phone call. And also can talk to your friends. And fortunately with Mr. Park Chung, he is very famous in Chonan prison. Take good care of yourself and stay warm. Remember me in your prayers.
Yeah, I have no idea why he even tried to appeal. Doesn't matter though, because the point is that Johnny self-owned himself because he appealed first, extending his own sentence before the prosecution even had a chance to. Remember, at the time that Johnny filed his appeal, the prosecution hasn't even filed out theirs yet. Johnny literally ensured that he would stay in detention center hell, which will take far longer than 6 months and in worse conditions than prison, just on the off chance that he could reduce his 6 month sentence. The only positive Johnny has going for his appeal is that apparently the time spent in detention will be deducted from his recalculated prison sentence, as it does count as time served. But considering how a detention facility has poorer living conditions than regular prison, even with prison labor, and the appeal processing and trial will take well over 6 months combined, means that it is guaranteed that he will stay in Korea much longer than 6 months and 20 days. So in a way, we got our wish of a longer prison sentence. Even if the appeal trial still keeps Johnny's original 6 months of jail time, the fact that Johnny will have to spend at least a year in a detention center is still worth it. I just think it's funny that just when Johnny seemed to finally resolve his legal plight, he decides to shoot himself in the foot and try an appeal, guaranteeing himself being stuck in South Korea far longer than if he just sucked it up and ate the 6 months of prison labor and 20 days of detention. Now he's stuck in another lengthy legal purgatory that will take him anywhere ranging from a year or 2 between the appeal processing and the actual appeal trial itself. Should have behaved yourself overseas, man. Now you're stuck in legal cock and ball torture hell. This is probably going to be my last Johnny Somali video for a while because honestly, I'm sick of talking about this dude. Hopefully he doesn't do anything else crazy. Alright, that's all I have to say. See ya.